Iran is the final piece of the puzzle, which is precisely the reason why, since the fucking 90s, Benjamin Netanyahu has been salivating at the prospect of doing this to Iran. They gonna shut you down for that? What do you mean? Who is they, and why would they shut me down? I'm not saying anything that's like out of pocket at all. I'm perfectly cool, calm, and collected. I'm not actually, I'm not saying anything that's like even remotely fucking problematic. I'm not even saying anything that you can perceive as potentially problematic. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Here's Jeffrey Sachs.
Supposed to be another round of negotiations between the United States and Iran this weekend on the nuclear issues. Instead, Israel, clearly together with the United States in advance, opened a war with Iran, despite the ongoing negotiations. There is no diplomacy.
Benjamin Netanyahu speaking live at ABC.
In Israel, we just heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking directly to the Iranian people, encouraging them to rise up and rebel, saying the Islamic regime has oppressed you for almost 50 years. We are clearing the path for you to achieve your freedom. Your thoughts, Matt?
You know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, Kira, has been pretty consistent with this message. He's done it, I think, 3 or 4 times before over the past couple of years, or at least a year, in which he has tried to appeal directly to the people of Iran. And what Israel is hoping might happen is that the dissidents and the opponents of the Iranian regime might have enough courage right now to come out of the woodwork and try some sort of civil uprising against the regime. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen because the regime has slammed the door shut on any sort of street protests in recent years. But I think that that's what they hope happens, that this not only breaks down the nuclear and missile arsenal of Iran, but also the political weaponry of the Iranian regime. And, you know, I think Steve Ganyard mentioned this earlier, as did Martha. Israel did not go after political leaders in Iran. This appears to be strictly aimed at Iran's military apparatuses, again, missiles, scientists, the leaders of its military and headquarters. And that appears, and obviously nuclear facilities. And they appear not to be going directly militarily after the political echelons, but it does appear that Netanyahu wants that to happen if it is possible. And again, he's been consistent with this kind of message for years now, Kira.
All right. So, Selena Wang, let's take it to you at the White House. We understand now that
part of the reason why they're saying that they're not going after the upper echelon is because the upper echelon is clearly like, look, you know, this is, I don't want to fucking, I don't want to strike someone while they're down, okay, this time being Iran. But part of the reason why they go after the IRGC is because those are the dudes with the fucking actual motion. Those are the dudes who actually can issue penalties to Israel, whereas the actual, the mullahs, the ayatollah, like they are not exactly popular leaders. And therefore, them continuing to run the country is beneficial for Israeli interests in the same way almost as the initial assessment that Netanyahu and his coalition made about Hamas being propped up as the primary party responsible for Palestinian statehood.
They got hit about as hard as you're going to get hit, also saying that there's more to come. But the president today, Kira, he is signaling and holding out hope that he thinks this will put the pressure on,
But yeah, they want regime change. They'll say they want regime change. But what they want actually is obviously not the fucking Ayatollah, but they want to bring the Shah back probably. They're, you know, they want to do what America did in Iran initially. They want to do what the Western powers did in Iran initially.
Going to move ahead.
So,
and there's plenty of people in diaspora, plenty of Iranians in diaspora that also would be willing to do that, would be on board to do that, which is really fucked up.
Sirens, air raid sirens going off in the northern parts of Israel as well.
You know what I think Iran learned from the previous 2 rounds of missile attacks against Israel, Kira, is that Israel's and its missile shield is pretty well equipped to defend against Iran if they spread out the attacks, right? If there are attacks happening simultaneously in multiple locations. But what they figured out in the October attacks was that if they concentrate the missile fire on one specific area, Israel cannot defend that some of those missiles or pieces of missiles will get through, and that's what we saw today. So we saw them appear to concentrate on Tel Aviv, and now they appear to be concentrating on more northern areas, probably, and I'm presuming this at this point, but Israel's northern air bases in the country. And, you know, why has there been so much focus on Tel Aviv? Well, obviously, it is the population center of the country with, you know, about a fifth of all of Israel's population concentrated in that central area right along the coast in and around Tel Aviv and its suburbs. But also Tel Aviv itself, in the very heart of the city of Tel Aviv, is where Israel's defense and military headquarters is based. And it's sort of a vestige of the 1930s and 40s when they started this base. And Tel Aviv was much smaller. The city expanded around it. So it may not.
So, one of the judges, can we not watch IDF propaganda? No, we have to watch IDF propaganda. Okay? Of course, we have to watch IDF propaganda.
Of the Israeli military and defense establishment. And not only is the military and defense establishment in the heart of Tel Aviv, but its intelligence establishment is just to the northern suburbs of Tel Aviv, only about 3 or 4 miles as the crow flies from that defense headquarters. So imagine if the Pentagon were in the very heart of Washington, D.C., right next to the White House, and then, Langley was next door just across the river.
Listen,
so in Israel, everything is very...
All I'm saying is,
and it's important to remember that Israel itself is...
All I'm saying is the HasanAbi doctrine remains true. If Iran had actual nukes by this point, Israel would not be able to do any of this shit. This is not just my assessment. John Mersheimer, who's much smarter than myself, even if we don't completely align on our worldview overall, John Mersheimer is still a very important academic in international relations. He says if Iran had nukes, the region would be infinitely more stable. That is literally true. And anyone that fucking says that is not true is only operating on the notion that Iran wants to develop nukes so they can fucking use it against America, so they can use it against Israel, whatever, and not simply abiding by the same principle of mutually assured destruction that would make it a lot harder for Israel to fucking strike Iran in the way that Israel is doing currently. No country, unfortunately, in the age of nuclear proliferation, no country on the planet can be a sovereign nation without nukes. I want no nukes. I want complete denuclearization. But in the absence of complete denuclearization, the only way that a country can maintain its sovereignty is if they have nukes, a nuclear program. This much is clear.
So Israel is able to fly over Iran now without really fearing for its pilots or its planes. It has complete supremacy of the sky. And the second thing is what you're noting, the change in military tactics that we are seeing develop.
What? Unlikely, I guess, but do you think anti-Zionist Israelis will rise up against Netanyahu for this? Fuck no. Fuck no. For Israeli society to actually turn around and get angry at Israel as the Israeli government for putting their lives on the line, they would have to experience a lot more of what Israel does to every other country in the region for them to finally turn around and be like, we are a pariah state in the West, and also simultaneously our living standards have eroded as a consequence of direct bombing. The entire missile defense system that Israel has, in unison with the American with the American defenses that are deployed in the region, would have to collapse. Okay, there is not enough of an ideological movement in Israel to push for anti-Zionism to begin with. There are far too little people in the state of Israel that are anti-Zionist. It just would not happen. Did Germans rise up against Adolf Hitler in the 1940s? They did, actually, by much larger numbers than the anti-Zionist movement in Israel. According to the German estimations, I believe 800,000 Germans were jailed specifically for resisting against Nazi Germany. So yeah, they had a much larger presence of resistance, much larger presence of communism as well in the buildup. Liberals still point to the communists and the resistance against Nazis from trade unions, communists, and socialists alike as a primary reason for why capital owners were forced to make this gamble with Nazis because they were too afraid of capitalism being thwarted in Germany. Israeli society is held together with this glue of complete domination of all of its enemies and the fear, the fear-mongering narratives that like another Holocaust is imminent right around the corner, but this time an Arab Holocaust. Like Arabs are going to do the Holocaust to us. That is the primary thing that keeps Israeli society together. And it is also the primary reason why Israeli society has gotten more and more right-wing over the past couple of decades and eroded civil liberties, for example, without even the liberal Zionists recognizing how or why this is happening, because they will never examine the heart of the contradictions within Israeli society, within Zionism, which is that it is a supremacist, fascist ideology that is built around the principles of exterminating the outgroup. That's it. If you don't tackle the root cause directly at the root, you will never understand why the Itamar Ben-Gvirs of the world dominate your fucking politics all of a sudden.